G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to DCS World with Mags. So now it's the end of January, the holidays have come to a close, and so once again it's time to run over the developments in DCS World for the last month, and there has actually been a little bit on. First up, with the release of DCS 2.5 planned for tomorrow, I took some time to reach out to Matt Wagner, also known as Wags, the senior producer of DCS World at Eagle Dynamics, and ask a few questions in regards to DCS 2.5 and the much anticipated update to the Caucasus map. So Matt, thank you very much for taking your time to answer these questions today. Would you be able to take us on a bit of a run through on how Caucasus 2.5 map was rebuilt and the work that went into it?
So the idea of updating the Caucasus map actually went back several years, and initially we had much less ambitious plans in mind, and it was mostly just going to be a texture upgrade. And at that time we actually started talking with some talented community texture artists to actually do that. But then the more we looked into it, the more we realized that to really do it right and bring the map up to the quality of what we were seeing in the industry at the time, we really needed to do something much more thorough. So at that point, we decided to do it internally. And in addition to really updating the textures, at that point, we also pretty dramatically increased the resolution of the elevation mesh. Later on, then we also started updating all of the roads in the rail network. We updated the textures for almost all the buildings. And at that point, we thought we were pretty close. But then looking at the tree system, we realized that between the performance and the looks of the trees, it had a lot of room for improvement. So at that point, we went ahead and pulled the trigger on using speed trees. And that's actually been a lot of our work over the last several months. And we're pretty much almost done with that now. So, although the Caucasus map had very small ambitions at the beginning, but then over time, with adding more features, it really grew into something much more substantial, to the point it's something that we're pretty proud of. Oh, and a couple other things that just came to mind. We also added the procedural grass, and also we redid the technology for the rivers, so they actually have depth, and that way we could get rid of that odd parallax issue that the rivers had in the older version.
So exactly how has the rebuild of Caucasus 2.5 affected performance?
So probably one of the biggest goals for the rebuild of the Caucasus map has been to keep the same performance levels as we have right now for 2.2, which will be much better than what we have right now in 1.5. And this will be despite having much, much greater detail in 2.5 for the Caucasus map than you have right now in 1.5. Now, for those that have much older systems, your mileage may vary, but most of our focus is around systems that are focused around DX11, and we think that most users will have a pretty nice performance boost, if not the same, compared to, again, 2.2.
So comparable performance on modern systems. So obviously the core map and its direct assets have been upgraded, but what about its associated assets such as the ground units and emplacements, AI aircraft? Have they received any graphical updates as well, or are they being considered for an upgrade in the future?
So in addition to all of the map upgrades, there's always work going on updating older units and adding new ones. That's actually very separate from our map tasks. And this is always ongoing. And in addition to upgrading the older units, which you see periodically, we're also, of course, working on newer units as well. And in particular, we're really trying to flesh out more and more of the World War II units. On the AI side, a lot of work is still going on there. And a lot of this you can see in some of the new functions in the mission editor. And a lot of the AI work we're focusing on right now is more focused on the AI side for dogfighting.
Mm-hmm. So obviously the rebuilt map is the major feature of 2.5, but has there been anything new added to the 2.5 client in the way of visual physics or general optimizations or multi-threading improvements?
So one of the biggest elements of 2.5 are going to be the effects, and one of the biggest of those is going to be the explosions. And even in 2.2 you can see some of this already with some of the rocket explosions. But this is going to be a really big task because for every warhead type and weapon, we're trying to create a unique and realistic explosion for that. And it's going to be a huge amount of work, and we'll probably keep our effect guys busy for 2018. But other effects we're working on include the like the overwing vapors, which you can see in the Hornet right now. And we're also in the latter stages of implementing rain on the canopy for all the different aircraft. And there's some other effects we're working on at the same time that hopefully we can talk about in the near future. And in regards to performance, probably the biggest news on that end is going to be the implementation of the Vulkan API. And we're pretty confident that's going to see a really big boost in performance for most users.
I do have to say I'm really looking forward to those new effects. So this question pops up a lot. It's more a confirmation than anything else. Will DCS 2.5 bring about an end to the dual client state, that is 1.5 and 2.2, that DCS has been operating in for some time? Will we see unification of the clients permanently from this point on?
So yeah, definitely. And in fact, this is probably the biggest goal of 2.5 was to unify all the different versions into one single build. Having DCS divided into separate branches has been difficult for not just us, but also our third parties and of course our customers. So moving everything under the 2.5 umbrella has been a massive goal for us. So once 2.5 is fully out, there'll be just the regular 2.5 version, a open beta version of it, and that's pretty much it. We'll still have a 1.5.8 version available for those that, for whatever reason, can't get 2.5 to run their system, but the 1.5 version will essentially be unsupported at that point.
And what about the Steam build of DCS? Will it be receiving the 2.5 update as well, or will there be some delay?
So after the open beta releases of 2.5, and we're sure that there are really no huge blocking bugs in 2.5, we'll go ahead and release what we call the release version. And then 1 to 2 weeks after that, then we'll go ahead and release it into Steam. And just like our other modules, we'd like to really make sure that the product is good and stable and quality before we put it onto Steam. And then once it is on Steam, then it'll be updated just as frequently, as often as the regular version of 2.5 on the eShop.
So a slight delay, but not too far behind then, should everything go perfectly. So, I've really only got one last question here, Matt. Was there anything that the team has been especially proud of in the development of 2.5 that players may not see or know about?
So in addition to the things we've already talked about, probably the two other big things that come to mind, one is the lighting and one is the shadowing. So for the lighting, we now have deferred shading as well as the physically based rendering lighting. And to me, it really makes the world shine, pardon the pun. And you tie that into the shadowing, where literally every blade of grass, every tree, every building, every object is dynamically cast in a shadow. It just gives the whole world a sense of depth and realism that I think the team can be really proud of.
Oh, definitely. If the video that Eagle Dynamics has released so far is any indication, there is more than a lot that the team should be proud of. Anyways, thank you very much for your time, Matt, and I hope we can do this again in the future. Matt Wagner, everybody. So, moving on to DCS news for this month. Since it is January, movement has been a little slow around DCS, although this is to be expected. As much like everybody, the development teams will tend to take holiday breaks around this time of year. That said, we do have a couple of updates for this month. So, first things first, since we just spoke about DCS 2.5, let's begin with POLYCHOP, who announced a little earlier this month that unfortunately the Gazelle campaign will not be compatible with DCS 2.5 on release. No date has been announced on exactly when the campaign will be available, so Gazelle pilots enjoying the campaign and wanting to continue will need to keep a copy of DCS 1.5 available for that. Speaking of campaigns, HEATBLUR Simulations announced at the start of the month that a new Red Flag campaign for the AJS-37 Viggen is now available. So for those of you enjoying flying out the Viggen and looking for a new place to do it, campaign may be for you. Also, development of F-14 continues, although we haven't really received much in the way of information on its progress this month. Fingers crossed we'll get a larger update in February. Eagle Dynamics, of course, has been a lot busier than just working on 2.5, and of course earlier on this month entered the F-18 into pre-order, which you can pick up right now at the DCS store with the pre-order discount for $60 US. Full release price will be $80 US according to the storefront, which will make the F-18 the most expensive module in DCS. The price here is rather high, but it is also worth mentioning that the F-18 is also the first full-fidelity Generation 4 fighter available in DCS, with all of the other Gen 4 fighters coming out of Flaming Cliffs 3. The early access phase of the F-18 should begin within the next few months, so we'll find out then exactly how the cost versus quality of the module pans out. Eagle Dynamics is also continuing development on the Yak-52, and on the VR side of things is working on a new hand controller functionality for both the UI and in simulation. For those of you unfamiliar with this side of VR, most of the larger sets come with hand controllers that allow you to manipulate the VR environment by simply reaching out and touching it via the controller. Hopefully these new controller improvements should make it easier for VR pilots in DCS to directly interact with their cockpits from within the VR environment. And last but not least, we'll be finishing up with RAZBAM, who dropped a bit of a surprise on their Facebook this month. While it is in a very early stage of development and will likely not be available to DCS pilots for some time, likely not until after the M3CJ, RAZBAM has announced that they are currently working on the development of the LTV A7 Corsair 2 and have released a couple of early development screenshots. The A7 is of course a carrier-capable subsonic light attack aircraft that entered service with the US Navy in 1967 and continued service in the US Navy until 1991. The A7 is a fascinating aircraft and it should be a great addition to DCS World. That said, it's going to be quite a while away. I seriously wouldn't expect it at all this year, but we will follow its development progress as updates for it are released. Anyways, ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed this video and the updates on what's happening in DCS World. As always, remember to check the video description down below for links to my social media and to my Twitch channels, and also to click that like button if you do, share and subscribe if you want to see more, and until next time, take care.